In the winter of 1505, in a quiet village near Göppingen, Germany, the cold brought more than just snow. It brought death. A strange illness swept through the town. People coughed blood. Children died in their sleep. And the word on every whispering lip was witchcraft. Panic grew fast, faster than the sickness. And in less than a week, 5 women were accused. They were midwives, herbalists, mothers. But that didn't matter. The local magistrate, eager to show control, ordered their arrest. No trial, no defense, only pain. They were taken to the cellar beneath the town hall and tortured, day after day, bones broken, flesh torn, and under screams echoing through stone. The confessions came, not truth, just words forced from bleeding mouths. They were declared guilty, not by law, but by fear. On the 3rd morning, they were led to the town square. A wooden stake, dry straw, torches held high. One woman, barely able to walk, begged them to stop, not for herself, but for her unborn child. No one listened. As the flames rose, some in the crowd turned their heads, others cheered. And when it was over, only ashes remained. But fear never left. Over the next 6 years, more than 80 women in the region were burned. No proof, no trials, just fire and silence. The Göppingen massacre was not the first, and it would not be the last. It was never about witches. It was about control, fear, and what humans become when reason is drowned by rage. When the Black Death arrived in the English village of Ayam, panic spread faster than the plague itself. The villagers begged for help, but the nobles on the nearby hill had other plans. Sir Thomas Brett, a local landowner, gathered 30 of the wealthiest men and women in the area and sealed themselves inside his stone manor. They brought food, livestock, barrels of wine, and their most loyal servants. The goal: wait out the plague in comfort, untouched by the horrors outside. For weeks, music and laughter echoed from within the walls, while the village below descended into silence and death. But isolation breeds madness. One morning, the wine was poisoned. A servant girl was found dead at the long table, blood seeping from her mouth. Accusations flew. Friends became enemies. Knives replaced prayers. By the end of the 3rd month, nearly everyone inside the manor was dead, not from the plague, but from each other. The final survivor was a kitchen boy named Giles, found days later by villagers when the gates were finally opened. He was sitting alone in the great hall, surrounded by corpses. His face and hands were stained red. He had eaten the dead to survive. Giles died 3 days later, not from illness, but by choking on his own tongue, which he had bitten off during a seizure. In the summer of 1473, in the shadow of the Alps, a quiet monastery outside Turin became the setting for a tragedy born not from war, but from silence. The brothers of San Luca had lived in peace for over a century. Isolated from the city, they devoted their lives to prayer, labor, and strict vows, including silence. Only the abbot and senior monks were permitted speech during the day. All others communicated through gesture, nods, and obedience. Brother Matteo, a novice of only 20 years, was assigned to the monastery's deepest cellar, a dark, cool place where they stored salted meat, wine, and water barrels. On the 3rd day of August, he descended to fetch supplies and did not return. They assumed he had been given another task. Then night fell. The next morning, he was still missing. But no one questioned it aloud. In their world, Speaking without permission was a sin. Even if one noticed something strange, a missing face at morning prayer, an untouched bowl at dinner, they remained silent, trusting the rules more than their instincts. Brother Matteo had slipped, breaking his leg on the damp stone stairs. Unable to stand, he crawled toward the heavy cellar door, but it had latched shut behind him. No one heard his cries, and even if they did, no one would dare break the vow. By the fourth day, the water barrels stood full, but Matteo could not reach them. He tried licking the condensation from the walls. He whispered prayers between parched lips. He died on the sixth day. His body was found only after the scent reached the corridors above. The abbot ordered prayers, penance, but no apology. Not one brother spoke of it again. A century later, a visiting scholar wrote that he saw strange scratches on the inner side of the cellar door. He claimed they spelled out a single word over and over: aqua, water. In the bitter winter of 1521, as Sweden fought to break free from Danish rule, the halls of Landskrona Castle ran red with blood, not from a battle, but from betrayal. The castle, once a stronghold for Danish forces, had been seized by Swedish rebels. Inside its thick stone walls, noblemen and soldiers loyal to Denmark were held as prisoners. Among them, Erik Troll, a former regent of Sweden, and several members of his household. They believed they would be ransomed, treated with dignity. After all, they were men of status, and they had surrendered without resistance. But the mood in the countryside was turning. Years of occupation, heavy taxes, and executions had fed a hunger not just for freedom, but for revenge. On the night of February 24th, a group of rebel commanders met behind closed doors. No records were kept, but what followed was deliberate. At dawn, the prisoners were led out, one by one. They were not told why. Some were still in their nightclothes. They passed through the silent courtyard under the gaze of armed guards, and then were taken to the lower barracks, where the floors had already been covered in straw. There in that cold stone room, they were executed by axe. Methodically, no trial, no mercy. Some tried to plead, others stood defiant. One boy, the son of a Danish officer, begged for his father. He was the last to die. The bodies were buried in shallow, unmarked graves outside the walls. The snow covered the ground quickly, but the stench of blood clung to the castle for weeks. Years later, as peace returned, rumors spread of red stains that no servant could scrub away, of muffled screams heard beneath the flagstones, of a boy's voice calling for his father in the dead of night. But history books don't mention ghosts, only justice and revenge. In the spring of 1343, the halls of Lihula Castle echoed with the sounds of music, firelight, and false promises. Danish Lord Waldemar Atterdag, ruler of Danish Estonia, had arrived at the fortress to negotiate peace with a group of rebellious Estonian peasants. They had invited him to a feast, a gesture of diplomacy, and Waldemar accepted. Inside the castle, his retinue laughed and drank, unaware that the wine was laced with more than just celebration. The villagers served them with smiles and silence, but behind every glance was rage. Years of cruel taxation, forced labor, public executions. The people had not come to make peace. They had come for justice. When the feast reached its height, and the Danes were drunk and unaware, the doors slammed shut. Screams echoed down the stone corridors. Blades flashed in torchlight. One by one, Waldemar's knights were struck down, still holding their goblets. Waldemar himself was dragged from the table. He begged, not for his life, but for his men, It didn't matter, none were spared. The bodies were tossed into the moat, their heads placed on spikes outside the gate. The banquet hall, once filled with song, now stank of blood and smoke. The Estonian rebels didn't just kill the men, they erased them. No graves, no names, just silence. And though Denmark would return and take its revenge, the story of Waldemar's final feast remained. A lesson written not in ink, but in steel and fire.